Hey, everybody, welcome back into the Lettermen Lounge. This is Lettermen Live. It is brought to you by Roosters. It's a fun, casual joint, and it is a absolutely beautiful day in Columbus, Ohio. The patio is rocking. It's one of those days that they just write poems about how glorious it is to live in this city. The Buckeyes win over the weekend. Everybody's ready to get out, get some Roosters, get ready for Appetizer Tuesday. Just lay down a meal today to get ready for the cheesy bacon fries on Tuesday. It's just going to be
They do. They look so good.
a great episode. So much to talk about with Nicole Cox, Bobby Carpenter, and Jeremy Birmingham. I'm Austin Ward. So, hey, I think normally it'd be pretty boring to talk about 59-7, but that's not the case for Ohio State in general with what's gone on in this first month of the season with the Big Ten reopener, I guess we'll call it, on Saturday in the afternoon at Rutgers.
Yeah.
Berm and I are very much looking forward to that road trip, our favorite of all time. Always works out for Berm's birthday with a 9-hour road trip over to Piscataway, New Jersey.
There's a lot to do there, though, once you get there.
No, there's not.
No,
There's
there sure isn't.
There is stuff your face, however, and that's what we're looking for.
We're just going to pack up some Roosters on Friday morning and make a little picnic along the way. And then we're going to talk a little bit more about Ohio State's offensive identity and Kayvon Pope. Bob, as someone who was dedicated, committed to this program, has given your life to still participating and being around in the Woody, what did you think when you either saw or heard what was happening in the second quarter in that silver bullet position room with Al Washington, with Kayvon Pope, with Ryan Day? I don't think I've ever seen anything like it.
Yeah, it was pretty unique. I mean, I've been a part of teams where guys have quit, maybe after training camp or things like that, things didn't line up. And, I'm curious to ask some of those. Well, some of them I do know. I've talked to them and they've regretted it. And, they're like, seemed like a good idea. Played a couple of years. It's my senior year. It's not looking like I'm going to play as much as I want or maybe where I want. And so they walked away and it's like, yeah, I regret that now for the rest of my life. Looking back, I regretted it middle of the season, once you decided not to do it. I was looking though for Ric Flair to come out of somewhere. I mean, maybe a Hulk Hogan. I don't know where all the new wrestlers are, but I felt like I was in an episode of Monday Night Raw where ripping the gloves off the heel, maybe tearing open a jersey, has a Akron jersey on underneath. I mean, it was just, there was a lot going on. Wow. I mean, this is happening. And the amazing thing is that it went largely under the radar due to the fact that there was no sideline cameras on it. There's really no footage of it. So unless you were in the press box and you got an eagle eye like Austin Ward and said, hey, this looks like a volatile situation, I'd better watch this. Or you're probably in the first 15 to 20 rows of the stands on the team side. And you're like,
if you caught a Kayvon Pope glove, maybe.
Maybe got hit by one when you weren't paying attention. Well, it's like, what's going on? And then, because you can hear the arguments and stuff. When you're right there in the front row and there's not a lot of noise, you can hear things going on. But there was still no evidence of it until actually you got to the Twitterverse later. But, I've never seen anything quite like that escalate to that level. I've seen a lot of arguments. So you guys getting, fights with coach, potentially even maybe get him up to the locker room. I've never seen a guy kind of go to the locker room on his own, come back, and then be escorted up. It's just disappointing, though, because I think some of these young men don't understand at the time. Believe me, and I was one of those guys, and I was fully burn the house down with me inside. I don't care. This house is coming down. And you don't realize, hey, probably next day, probably wasn't the best idea. You're amped up emotionally. Things aren't going your way. You had some stuff happen, and they get into it, and it's yeah, 24 hours later, probably didn't, 12, 6, whatever it may be. Yeah. As soon as you come off that emotional high, I really let that thing get out of control. And so I don't necessarily feel sorry for Kayvon with how he handled it. I mean, he's not 18. I mean, he's a grown man. He's old enough to consume alcohol and fight in the military. So he made his choice, but it's just tough to see that happen because once you sent out the tweet, which was the next level of it, you couldn't come back from it again. That's when Ryan couldn't justify, hey, we had an argument on the sideline. There's a disagreement between players about who was supposed to be out there. It escalated. We got a lot of competitive, passionate guys. This is good because they care about what's going on.
Yeah.
Couldn't say that because then you get into the locker room and it's just out there for the whole public to see. So he couldn't walk that back. and then ultimately leading to, his dismissal, which wasn't he going to quit? Well, yeah, it seemed like a good idea at the time, but I think maybe ultimately that wasn't, the end game. That's kind of quitting just in the moment, maybe not on the full scale of I don't actually want to do this anymore once I'm of sound and competent mind.
As someone who's been through the brotherhood, right? How do you balance the weight of this is my guy, we've been through all these fights together versus how dare you do this to the team that we're all playing for? How do you balance that?
Well, it depends on the guy and what they did. And, I'm not going to sit here and say Kayvon Pope was, number one in Mickey Marotti's gold chart working out. Because there are guys who I've been a part of, on a team where they made mistakes. The coaches are talking about it, and players go in listen, you go either go to bat for the guy, or you're we don't need him. And that happens. If all that would have happened, even maybe with the tweet, if you're this is a guy who's done it right, wires got crossed, things got elevated, you would maybe go in.
Yeah.
And you could see a guy like Haskell Garrett, who's a leader on that defense, saying, hey, I know we did all this. I'm not saying he shouldn't be punished because you know what? Maybe he's suspended for X number of games, and he has this. I always say there's worse things to life than being suspended for games. And then he has to do these things to earn his way back and to earn the respect and trust of the team again. If he's willing to do that, then that's a different story. But from everything you kind of see, I don't think he was in that situation.
Right, and that was why this came to a head anyway, because he's a guy that throughout his career at Ohio State hadn't done the little things throughout the week to earn that sort of respect and that sort of
big trust,
that place of honor inside of the program. And so when you go out, and as you said, I do think that Ryan Day probably would have welcomed him back to the team.
Welcomed is
it wasn't
maybe not
it's not
accepted.
It's not a probable. It was a possibility.
Right. He would have allowed him back, but I think that the decision to escalate it by going to Twitter
makes it public.
Makes it a public issue, and you guys, anyone who's played sports knows what happens in house is supposed to stay in house. And when you put it out there in the streets like that, it becomes impossible.
The Twitter streets.
And in these mean streets of Twitter, man, once you do that, you can't come back.
There's a sign. I think there's one in the Woody.
It should just say "Don't tweet."
That's the and this is where a lot of places it should don't Herm Edwards don't click. If you want to write it out and look at it, then read it out loud to yourself a couple times. And then all of a sudden, you're probably going to be X, discard, do not save in drafts.
Do not send.
But there's a sign in a lot of facilities. And, being around it, being there after as a former player, I respect it probably even more, which is kind of disturbing some of the events that happened over the last couple weeks. But what you see in here and what you say in here stays in here. Mm-hmm. And there's certain things that, you can talk about and speak to, but you don't reveal and the quote air the dirty laundry because nobody wants that. No, whether it's your football quote family, your personal family, friend group. As soon as you take it where we had a heated conversation and you're bringing in a third party, that's when things start to get a little weird.
Especially the media, especially when you are in
people like Nicole in the media.
No, not me. But the football team, they're looking for any dirt, any drama, any story to just add. No, and I'm not trying to speak negatively against the media, but there are
people
outlets out there that would just make it that much worse, and that's the last thing they need right now.
And it goes on to social media. Sorry, Austin. It goes on to social media because people want to be validated for their feeling, right? Mm-hmm. So he puts that out there because he wants people to
agree with
it.
Yep.
And so that's where, we could get into a whole big episode about the problem with social media, but
okay, because I was getting ready to start on it, but we will just leave it.
No, do it, Nicole.
You just need to stop and think before you tweet. It's not always easy, especially for young kids who are built on fire and passion and energy. But once you get to that point, once you send the tweet, how do you come back?
And you don't. And we just to bring kids in. That's the number one thing I think a lot of parents try to teach their kids too is once you put it out there, it's out there. And yes, you can always delete it, but guarantee with him in his position, people are screenshotting it and it's out there and you can never at that point change it. At least if it was a private conversation with Coach Day, it's just between Coach Day and him, So, I feel bad for him in the sense that it's a mistake. And I say, to my kids, there are mistakes that I can't fix for you, and social media is one of them. And I feel like in his situation, this is a mistake that can't be fixed. And I feel bad for him in that sense because that stinks as a,
Well, it
you know.
burned up 3 to 4 years. Even if he would have transferred, we're talking about Dallas Gant. He's choosing to leave. Dallas, I mean,
Look at how differently
it was handled.
I mean,
Dallas will always be welcomed at Ohio State. You look at Joe Burrow, when you get guys that leave and they go other places. Heck, even Noah Spence and how he left, a number of years ago, and it wasn't the greatest situation.
No.
Look at the positive things that they did here, and you can accept that and be like, you know what, you will always be part of this family to a certain extent. When you do that, you're slamming the door and saying, I don't want to be part of the family anymore. And you really don't mean that at the time, or in the grand scheme, just maybe at the moment.
Right. It's Monday morning. He's entered the transfer portal officially as of today. 6 days ago, Dallas Gant entered the transfer portal. Just look at the difference they came in the same recruiting class. They played the same position. And the difference in how things are handled is so extreme and now was so public and so bad for Ohio State's look, I guess, that how do you, what you're saying is right. It's totally different.
And I think it's a lesson in life, too, that there are still adults out there that are still learning not to act on their emotions,
Well, there were adults that were part of the Ohio State linebacker family who wanted to take exception with what happened and took Kayvon Pope's side. And I have to sit here and say, look, compare it to what Dallas Gant did or the way that Taraja Mitchell, this person that should know better, Kayvon Pope was not in the same situation as these other two people. That is just a fact.
Yep.
If this had been the first or second or third, fourth time that he tried to quit the team, then you have a different conversation. And then the other part that you're talking about, Nicole, forget about even taking it to social media where the whole world can see it. There were 95,000 people in the stands. So even if the Big Ten Network didn't
Also, that's pretty solid, by the way.
It was a good crowd.
Focus on that.
And the tailgate scene was also much livelier, anecdotally, from when we walked in. So people were back. But the Ohio State fan base that has already been scrutinizing every move that they've made from every single week and counting who is out there to watch Carmen, Ohio, and analyzing who's going in the portal and what's happening and all these decisions that have been made over the last 3 weeks, that's all amplified and magnified. And that wouldn't be a mystery to Kayvon Pope. And you can't do it in the middle of a game. You just can't do it in the middle of a game.
Nope.
I can't say it any louder.
I mean, halftime was coming up. There was
Just
time
wait,
to blow
don't
up.
come back out.
It literally was happening as his teammate was returning an interception for a touchdown. So
That's what saved
That's
it.
what also overshadowed it. And I didn't watch Ronnie Hickman make the pick six because when Kayvon Pope ran out there and Taraja Mitchell passionately waved him off the field, I thought, uh-oh. Because if you're making a list of the 5 people, your wild cards,
Yeah.
your shank guys that you've been looking for
All
the last
shank
couple
squad.
weeks, Kayvon Pope might have been all 5 of them for me. So when he was sent to the sideline, I told Spencer right next to me, I said, something's happening here. I said, this isn't going to be good. But it ramped up way beyond what I ever could have anticipated. I just started writing what I saw, stream of consciousness, because as you said, people weren't watching the replay. They didn't have that. And I thought, oh, maybe they've got this under control and they've managed it. And then it ramped right back up again. And it was crazy. And I just don't think that Ohio State had any other choice in this situation.
No. I mean, maybe the choice in the future, C.J. Barnett, former Buckeye, safety at Ohio State, believe Northmont grad, if I'm not mistaken, former member of the CPD, maybe arming him with like a tranq dart, or maybe some sort of taser, some sedatives. So when guys get on the verge
you feel like,
of
too.
potentially,
you're like, just stop talking.
I'm not going to let you make this mistake.
Yeah.
Tranq dart in the neck, and hey.
Can we do that to our kids sometime?
Is
that legal?
It is.
Some ideas over here.
It is. I'm going to stop you from ruining your life. That's what I'm going to do right now.
And that's what you feel when you watch a situation like that. And I think the reason Ohio State could not bring him back is because what kind of an example does that set for the other players like the Dallas Gant that kept his mouth, that didn't act on his emotion? Because guaranteed he was emotional about his situation and he handled it within the team conversation and handled it professionally. And there's something to be said for that because that's difficult to do.
Well, you're a mom, Nicole. You let your kids act a fool, and then it's like, all right, you're good. You can never come back from that. They realize like this happened, and so other people are going to see it. Like, well, that happened with him.
Yeah.
Like, and it just gives you so much latitude. You'll never get it back.
I made this point to people in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center directly yesterday. If you want to maintain discipline for the future of your program, and they've already had this situation, okay, or you can't deny, like Marcus Hooker came back after 2 DUIs. They made that choice, and they want to be supportive of their players. They say they make a pledge to the families. That's great, okay? But you're going to do that, and you let him come back. He's not even playing. Was it worth it to make that statement to your team from the disciplinary point? Probably not. Wasn't worth it. Kayvon Pope is not even a off-the-field issue. This was about playing time. He walked off the field. If that's the standard that you're going to have the program to, that you're allowed to throw a fit in public about not being able to play as many snaps as you want, you might have to just start all over and blow it all up, because you will never be able to discipline anyone else in your program again. And there was no choice here.
Especially because it wasn't his first time doing that. Right. I mean, he did it after the Minnesota game. He did it after the spring game. He's done it multiple times. So the point is, when your entire program is based on the concept of tough love, at some point that love has to be tough. And sometimes that means making a tough decision and telling someone, you've done something we can't come back from, because that's how you learn. And I know for Ryan Day, that had to be the conversation in his mind. Like, are we being true to our standard, to our motto here, if we dismiss him? But the point is, for the kids that have done it the right way, you're trying to teach lessons here. And I think this is where Ohio State still, I want to give kudos to what they're doing, because it's not a place like SEC schools that I won't name specifically where.
Why not? Bobby does it. This fills up his Twitter mentions.
This is a program that they really are trying to still mold young people. It's not just about creating football players, and so there is a chance for a teachable moment. But how many teachable moments does someone get? And I think that at some point that goodwill tank runs out, and we ran into that on Sunday.
And
okay,
I guarantee it
Goodwill
Ryan
tank
Day.
was on empty.
Yeah, goodwill hunting.
And I guarantee it killed Ryan Day to have to tell him, like, you can't come back. I mean, I mean, don't get me wrong. There's also that point where you're just like so frustrated too with him that you're like, okay, I don't want to deal with this. But he's invested how many years in him, and he's part of the brotherhood. He's part of the Ohio State football family. And so, I mean, I guarantee that wasn't easy.
Get it out, Bob. Last thought.
It's one thing. Last parting thought on that, since you brought up Ryan Day. You know, he obviously saw and experienced what happened on the sideline. I would have liked to have been a fly on the wall when someone had been like, yeah, this is what Kayvon tweeted out.
Like,
I mean, just look. I mean, could you even say anything?
he said in the post-game press conference, Bill Landis asked him about it, and he's like, yeah, somebody told me there was a tweet. I'm like, yeah, you knew it right away what the tweet was. I'm going to investigate what it was, and
figure out
I think spell check may have let him down. I don't know. It wasn't pretty. But there's no way around it. We had to talk about it. But there were a lot of positives on Saturday night, believe it or not,
There were.
from a game that felt more normal for Ohio State. So let's get into some Roosters Buckeye leaves. Nicole has a notebook full of options. She might go Schleg style today and take the whole defense, for all I know. But
Yes.
definitely has a lot of options.
I was talking a lot about the defense earlier, guys. You know, I feel like the Buckeyes really needed this game. You could see their confidence level just grow throughout the entire game because of all the scoring, and it was just very impressive. And our neighbors were over. We were watching it outside. It was a gorgeous night, you know. And the defense looks a lot more gap sound, you know, against the rush. So that was great to see, you know, for all the trouble. You could just see the confidence in these guys, which was really great. So I'm giving it to the entire.
I'm just picturing
defense.
Nicole now out watching the game in the yard. She's got a whiteboard up next to the
Oh,
big
boy.
and she's drawing up like A gap, B gap. We're filling the gaps.
There was a lot of conversations going on. It was so much fun to watch. It really was, and it was an exciting game because there was so much scoring, you know. And so I think the defense gets it this week for sure.
Haskell Garrett was very good.
3 sacks. I mean, he looked great, and they were even talking. Maybe it was in Rapid Reaction that you guys.
It's a great
were
show.
I loved it. That they were just talking about how you could see he was bringing what he's brought to other games previously.
Yeah.
Like he just stood out a lot more this game.
Berm, I did realize that I made a mistake in Rapid Reaction. I said that Haskell had a 3-sack game last year. That was Tommy Togiai.
Yeah, because Haskell only had 2 in his career.
Yeah, so I have
coming
to
into the game.
I have to make sure that I acknowledge and issue a correction. He instead just scores touchdowns.
I
and doesn't
appreciate
get
that. Yeah,
sacks.
he had as many sacks coming into this game against Akron as he has career touchdowns.
Well, now that's changed because he racked up 3 of them.
Bob,
That's huge.
Bob, make your pick.
I'm going to go with one of the young linebackers who I thought has carried himself particularly well, looked good, very productive out there, Mr. Cody Simon. I thought he was kind of on his way, and I think we're going to start to see a youth movement. And if you're going to play young guys, I want young guys that are dudes that carry themselves the right way. Like Cody Simon's going to make some
Wait
mistakes.
a minute. You wanted wild cards and guys stabbing people with
Cody
knives?
Simon,
Now,
I think
you want a future president?
Well, listen. I also think that he might have the ability to stab somebody.
The rules are changing for what a president's allowed to do.
100%.
Well,
Or what you'd be willing to do to get there. Cody Simon speaks with authority. You can hear him talk. He has conviction. He has a high GSF. Things matter to him. And when you have a really high GSF, you might be willing to do some things on the edge of the law to make sure to preserve yourself, your family, or your friends. And I think that maybe he has that in him. It's not the crazy style, but it's like, hey, if you're really going to press me into service, you're going to get everything that comes. So Cody Simon, Buckeye Leaf.
I
like it.
Bob was way more excited to give him out this week. If you cover as a great team, then he's excited to give out Buckeye Leaves. That's the standard.
I was right on the edge there at the end there. I mean, it was...
Tyleek Williams was a very popular guy in Vegas on Saturday night, I think. Or wherever else.
I've got a unique approach to the old Roosters Buckeye Leaves here. And this is because of Kayvon Pope. My Buckeye Leaves go to Dallas Gant. It goes to DeMario McCall. It goes to Seven Banks. It goes to Steel Chambers. It goes to a lot of guys in the program that have been there a long time, that have been waiting and been forced to make some decisions, to move around, change positions, and have done it in a way that
I love it.
He's
my kind of guy.
Is a respectful, professional manner. Master Teague, these are kids who have, some of them may still end up moving on, but they've handled themselves the right way. And I think that in a program that bases itself, Marcus Williamson, another guy, like this is a program doesn't get built overnight. You have to have guys that understand the sacrifice that goes into it and are willing to put themselves behind other people. And so when I watch someone like Master Teague, who has clearly been a team leader for Ohio State now for the last 3 years, he's been put down into the third spot in the running back order. Hasn't complained at all. He just goes out there and he runs his butt off. He scores touchdowns. Maybe he's going to find another spot someday. Maybe he won't. Marcus Williamson, a guy like that, who's now coming into the season in his 5th year, has been usurped in the lineup by a guy like Cam Martinez, who all Williamson did is go out there in the second half and play the entire half and play his butt off.
Play hard.
And that's all you can ask for from these kids. And not everyone's going to make it to the NFL. And I think comes a point in a career where you realize that what you've given to the program, what you've given to the school you put that time into, directly impacts what you're going to get out of it the rest of your life. And I think that you see some kids who've really just made that decision, and I think they deserve it.
That's my favorite by far.
Love Marcus.
Firm.
Great
I just
kid.
love it.
Wow. What about you, Austin?
Really cook something up. Now I just have to talk about the game
after
you get all that.
You want to follow that up?
Not really.
That was amazing.
That
I love that.
Sorry.
Why didn't you just go last if you were going to do that?
Sorry about that.
Now I have to talk about like Kyle McCord just having a great first start and winning a game. And he wasn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination, and it's the second time in a month that Ohio State had to go through this. But every quarterback who's going to start a game has to do their first one at some point. It's the 4th true freshman in school history to start a game. With he and Travion Henderson, that became the first time in Ohio State history that 2 true freshmen started together in the backfield. So you said maybe there's a youth movement coming. It's fully here. Now, I don't think that will be the case on Saturday night at quarterback.
Afternoon.
Why do I keep... I'm just so used to playing under that. And if it finishes at night, it counts as a night game to me. Whatever, 3:30. I think that C.J. Stroud, as long as that week of rest worked out the way Ohio State envisions, that he will remain the starter. But what Kyle McCord did do that I think it will be encouraging and or challenging, or however you want to phrase it for Ryan Day, is that if the injury lingers, or if there are a couple 3-4 drives where it just looks out of whack and the production's not there, well, no longer is Ohio State having to put out somebody who's never taken a snap into a game and say, go rescue the team. I think you look at the first 3 weeks and everybody said that, well, maybe against Tulsa, why isn't he just trying Kyle McCord? Well, he didn't prepare.
It was a one-score game.
Yeah, and that's unfair to him. That's unfair to the rest of the team that's trying to win the game. Like, they had enough with Travion Henderson to win that game without it. And to just throw Kyle McCord out there without the benefit of a ton of first-team reps, without ever having ever played in a game, just not going to happen. Well, now if you get into a similar situation, whether that's against Rutgers or anybody else, you at least know what Kyle McCord has done. And he was nervous early. You saw that. That's why you wouldn't be wanting to do that in the middle of the Oregon game or the middle of the Tulsa game. You know, that was never in the cards. And also, C.J. Stroud threw for almost 500 yards against Oregon. But that's neither here nor there.
Yards are meaningless.
Well, they can be when you run.
Tell that to Justin Fields, who threw for 1 yard on Sunday.
Sacks mattered a lot, too.
Right. Yards do count.
Not on the scoreboard, though.
Well, they do
exactly. They count.
Matt
you don't get them. You don't get points on the
Matt
scoreboard.
Nagy doesn't even want yards, so that's a different story altogether. But Kyle McCord made a mistake, so he got a learning lesson. He got the reps. He got to go through it. Threw for 300 yards. Had a couple touchdowns. Not all of it was the most challenging throws anyone will ever have to make. I love the pop passes, the touch passes, the jet sweep motion, whatever Ohio State calls it, which appears to be different than what it used to be in 2014 when JT did this and became a Heisman Trophy contender. Those plays work. There's a bunch of other talented people out there. So Kyle McCord, he gets a Buckeye leave from me. Don't think that necessarily means that it becomes a starter, but at least it's an honor. You always want to get a Roosters Buckeye leave. And you also want to hear Nicole Cox's prediction when Ohio State plays at Rutgers.
Yes.
I believe it's a 16-point spread. Is that right, Bob?
It was 17. Maybe
17.
It's moved. Depends on where you go to get your action, Austin.
That's a good point.
Mm-hmm. So prediction-wise, I'm going to say 31-23. I think it's going to be a little closer because I think after watching Rutgers last year, they're just kind of they surprise us. They do some different kind of I can't find the word.
They play hard. They
had gimmicks
but
last
they do
year.
like the 2 passes.
The double,
yeah.
They laid down in the end zone and did the trick kickoff
awesome.
return.
I love that.
I mean, it confuses me. Like, I wonder, are you allowed to do that? But obviously you are. So I think it might be a little closer. But I had a question for you guys really quick. So do you think, and this kind of goes back to Pope, do you think that that Ryan Day is playing all of these true freshmen so much now in these easier games to help with kind of like our COVID year where these kids didn't get a lot of practice, and that way the veterans are having to sit out a little, but it's because they know that I don't know.
I think they're playing the young guys because they're going to probably just start playing the young guys.
Yeah. I think at this
for the
point,
most part.
It is related, though, Nicole. Just interject.
They didn't play
it is
last
related
year.
to COVID because, and the first 2 weeks may have looked a lot different if Lathan Ransom had got a whole season or throw anybody else out there that you want on defense. Cody Simon, without injuries, Ronnie Hickman, injuries as well. But these guys that could have played and didn't have practice time, didn't have game reps, they didn't get any of that. And this is across college football, not just Ohio State. That if you look at Clemson being an absolute dumpster fire on offense, if you look at Oklahoma struggling every week, and Spencer
I feel like
Rattler,
it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Every team is dealing with this, and that's what's made the first month of the season so wild. It's not just Ohio State that's dealing with this. You take away a year of development, and some got to do more than others. As Burma said, maybe the rules were different in different parts of the country, but you're still seeing teams in the SEC, definitely in the ACC, that are having those problems. You lose those practice reps, the development, the game reps. It's hurt. It's catching up, and it's almost like a lost year.
But overall, these young guys just might be better.
Yeah.
That's a great point. We're going to let Nicole get out of here.
Thanks, guys.
That's got her prediction
Thanks
on
for
the
having
record.
me.
That's what everybody waits for. She's going to go along with
I
her
just
day.
wish I was as good as last year, guys. I was
Hey,
a little better
it's
this
the
week.
It's the weird year. You can still blame COVID. That's what we're doing.
Okay.
Cheesy bacon fries this week.
Yes.
Our Tuesday. Roosters Bowl giveaway. Bobby's going to talk a lot more about that.
Huge congratulations to Chris Davis, who's our week 2 winner. I met him last week. He's so pumped, so excited. So
that's what he's doing.
I'm meeting our week 3. I know, right? That's who I thought it was, but it's not. It's a different one. I got really excited.
Different Chris Davis. Congrats to him anyway.
Yes.
We're going to take a quick break. We're going to eat some more Roosters, and we'll be right back with Lettermen Live.
And now with some early bowl predictions, Bobby Carpenter.
Well, Austin, what I'm seeing here is 12 lucky Roosters guests are getting the opportunity to travel to this year's Buckeye Bowl game. Each trip comes complete with 2 tickets, airfare, and hotel. 1 prize winner will be chosen each week. Guessing to register weekly at roosterswings.com.
That's great, Bobby. What I was asking was your prediction for the Buckeyes this bowl season.
I have no idea. I'm going to Roosters right now to register.
Precision engineering. Rigorous attention to detail. A Bryant Evolution heating system is so well designed, it's as much of a joy to install as it is to use.
Good to go.
For the dealer nearest you, visit Bryant.com.
All right, welcome back into the Lettermen Lounge. We are at Roosters for more fun, casual conversation. And Spencer Holbrook has joined us. And he apparently wanted to give out a Buckeye leaf.
Spencer, that's nice.
I'm going to give out a Buckeye leaf. I'm going to be very nice. I'm feeling pretty good on this Monday. If anybody knows, Steel Chambers has not, and I have not always been on the best of terms.
You haven't?
Why?
No. There was a social media incident. So I'm going to clear the air.
Never tweet.
Never tweet.
Again is the lesson.
Actually, I just tweeted a story link, but I guess I can't even tweet those.
Oh.
Anyways, Steele playing really well at linebacker right now. He looks like a guy who should have been playing linebacker a long time ago. And if he would have, I think he probably would be one of the leaders of that unit right now. And he's becoming one anyways. And so I think he deserves a Buckeye leaf for finally accepting the role of linebacker, finally making that move and going to that side of the ball and dedicating himself to it. And he was second on the team in tackles. He had a pass breakup. I think he had a quarterback hurry, tackle for loss. Like, he's flying around making plays in a room that looks pretty shaky right now. He's kind of becoming one of those stable guys who I think Ohio State's going to have to rely on down the road in Big Ten play. So I think he deserves a Buckeye leaf because I think he's just getting started of what he could do.
Bob, do you think that players who have an offensive background, it's easier to make that adjustment to defense than
what, coming from a special teams
background?
background?
I just mean like for someone like who's really has an offensive mind.
Yeah.
As opposed to just being or going from defense to offense, for example, like a Cade Stover. I mean, as someone who like Cam Martinez comes to mind because you see him.
You love him.
Well, sure, but also because he's actually played
Well, sure.
He's played really well in the 2 games he's had a chance to get in there. And I would just wonder if you think those guys see the ball better.
I do think that they're, especially if you're talking about receivers probably playing defensive back, as long as you possess the skills and traits to be able to backpedal, flip your hips, and do things that are a little bit different than wide receiver, I mean, I think it's a benefit. And as far as like, that's more with Cam than with Steele, playing running back is all about finding space. And they can draw up, hey, this is the hole that's going to be there. This is where we think it's going to go. And things happen all over the place. And it's literally about finding slivers of light, being able to identify that. And there's a certain element of that playing linebacker helps you. Like AJ and I used to talk about that. We both played running back in high school. And they're like, hey, find the ball. And it's like, okay, well, you're trying to find it from the mirror image. Where's the light? You know, I know I'm supposed to be here. I take care of that. But there's no way they're running there, and you start to fall back and you can get it on plays. And watching Steele play and just seeing him some in practice, I feel like he sees that, and because he doesn't necessarily look like when he first started, like fully certain about what he was supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
But he did a great job of finding open air and just had a knack to be able to do that. And that's probably seeing that reverse picture of what he normally would see at running back.
I may be very wrong about this. The explanation that the coaching staff always gives, that Ryan Day gives, when you're talking about moving positions for players, whether that was DeMario this year, whether that's been in the past with Sam Hubbard or Cade Stover, but Steel Chambers specifically comes to mind. So, well, the player needs to buy into it. We're not going to force somebody to move positions. But in the case of Steel Chambers, I always just wonder, like, why don't you? If you are, like, it's not, you're most valuable to the team if you're in the position where you should be playing best. And dating back to his recruitment, you know, Mark Pantoni and those people saw Steel Chambers as a better linebacker, and he was never going to climb that pecking order at running back. And so I get it that if somebody's not fully invested in, like, I think I'm a running back, you don't want to they may not be as committed to the process at linebacker. But if that's the case, like, what are they actually giving to the program? If you say, need you to play linebacker, this is where you're going to be best, and we're going into the spring game and Rowan McCullough is playing at linebacker, like,
oh god,
it couldn't have been more clear that there was a need and it matched up with his skill set. Like, why? I just don't get why they didn't say, this is it, And if you think you're a running back, the transfer portal is available. And I get that also like
isn't that probably why they don't do it? Because
yeah, but like, what value was there to Steel Chambers being at running back? It was never going to help them there. It just wasn't.
Well, there's too many other guys is the problem. I think he could have been a functional running back. He wouldn't have been like the guys that we've seen out there so far.
But again, like Ohio State's roster has to play into that.
Well,
they're giving the scholarship. And
what did they tell the young man when they recruited him? And if they said, we're going to give you an opportunity to play running back.
That's it.
I mean, so if you say, well, you can't play this anymore, you essentially lied to the guy.
It was. You're going to have the opportunity to play running back if that's what you want to do, and then we'll see how it plays out.
But how long is long enough for that opportunity? Because we saw him for a couple years, and again, this is Be Nice to Steal show, but he was putting the ball on the turf, and that's why he wasn't getting on the field.
If you told me that I had the opportunity to play a particular position when I got to school there, and it was my choice of what I wanted to do, then bleep everybody else. Yeah. I'm going to do this until I don't want to.
But
so you can say, well, you're going to take my scholarship, you're going to bump me off the team?
Yeah.
Like, that's okay. Now you're a bad dude. You might as well be coaching the SEC because you're straight up lying to guys when you bring them in. So you may look at it while you're taking up a roster spot. Well, you know what? I don't give a damn what you think because this is my career, and I'm going to do with it what I want. And if I want to stay here and try to wait it out and grind it out, and maybe you've told me in not so many uncertain terms that I'm never going to be able to get on the field there. We will recruit over you. You won't get over there. And if this is still what I want to do because, hey, I don't care about playing the next level, even if it's just me doing it in practice, I enjoy this more than something else, then I'm going to continue to do that.
Yeah, I don't think it's an entire coincidence that the decision to finally give linebacker a try lines up pretty nicely
when it's pretty thin.
With Travion Henderson showing up on campus and going, oh, okay, well, that might be a mountain I can't climb. Because if you look at the rest of the room before a guy like Travion gets to town, it might be a little bit more manageable. And you say, hey, there's not a huge gap between Marcus Crowley or Master Teague or Mayan Williams and myself. But when you see a guy like Trey, and then you start to see the opportunity at linebacker where the depth is so just exceedingly thin.
Razor thin.
Yeah. At that point, you go, well, this might make more sense. So maybe that's what takes so long for it to happen. But you have an opportunity. You only have a limited window of opportunity to make an impact at a place like Ohio State. And right now, and I'm telling you, it's probably the surprise of surprises for me this season is that not only does Steel Chambers look extremely adequate at linebacker, but he looks like he's getting better every single week. And I think the kid's going to be a contributor at that spot throughout the year.
Maybe for us, it's just because hindsight is so clearly 2020 that this move should have been made so long ago. Well. We don't exactly know everything that went on there. Maybe he was going to, and they're like, wait, let's see how this shakes out in the spring. So maybe we're a little too quick to.
But Bob's right, though.
Maybe he is right.
If Steele's mind is set on that, it doesn't matter what people are telling him coming out of high school. I told him as a recruiting analyst coming out of high school,
expert.
I thought his best future was at linebacker when I saw his tape, and he got pretty bothered with me back then when he was still in high school because I thought that, and I was writing that I think his future is at linebacker, and that's not what he wanted to hear. And for a lot of these kids, and Bob, you know this better than anybody, when you're at a level like Ohio State or above, you have so much confidence in what you can do that you sometimes can't hear anything from other people if it doesn't jive with what you feel.
I mean, you look at certain guys. I mean, to the detriment of their careers, to hold on to a certain position.
Terrell Pryor,
100%. And that's what I'm saying. It's like if you're bound and determined, the decision when Ryan Day says it has to be there, you've got to own it because if you don't want to do it, you're not going to be productive over there. We think it's like perfectly transferable. Hey, you're going to go there and work exactly as hard. Well, I don't really want to do this, and I don't like it. And this is why I like playing football. I like playing this position. And so it's like, are you a football player? Do you want to continue to play the game, or do you just want to continue to do this? And that's those conversations. Need to happen. Part of it is the coaching staff. You got to be able to sell them on it too.
Yeah.
And present them an opportunity, which we have an opportunity here. Probably not as much over there. We're pretty certain we can get you on the field, and assuming that you're half as decent as we think. And so you have to begin to pitch that to them. And from a guy there was position shifts during my career, and it's like, hey, we need you to do this for the team, and then this is also how it will benefit you. Now, this is what you're going to have to do to get better, and this is how we're going to work it in and be able to kind of transition. But it's ultimately going to benefit you. Here's how. And so you get the guys on board, like, okay, I've never done this before. I didn't envision myself doing it, but now that I am, I'm going to own this. And I think it's something you start doing. And he's like, I guarantee you after 3 or 4 days, and people are like, hey, you're doing a pretty good job. And like the coach is telling them, players can see it. You can see it on film. Like you can't fool the room. Like then all of a sudden there is that level of buy-in that probably may not have been there if after, fall camp, it's like, hey, you got to get over here.
I think it's fun for people to like take shots at Al Washington in that linebacker room right now. But as Austin and I were talking about this on Sunday night, like I think if you look at the room, despite the loss of Kayvon Pope, despite the transfer of Dallas Gant, you're seeing development out of Steel Chambers. Injury to Mitchell Melton. You're seeing development out of Steel Chambers. You're seeing Taraja Mitchell make plays and be active and be he's making mistakes. He's missing some tackles he needs to not miss. But you're seeing Cody Simon start to elevate. You're seeing Tommy Eichenberg slowly get better. He's not as athletic as the other guys in that room right now, and so he looks maybe a step slow. And certainly
part of it is the muddiness of what they were seeing in front of them, and now that started to get cleared up a little bit against Tulsa, where guys were going and doing what they were supposed to.
But I think that room's getting better, and I think that even though it's now extreme within, I think Paulie Neoteote has played fine when he's been on the field. He just needs to get more reps. I think the room needs bodies, but I think it's actually playing much better than it did 3 weeks ago.
Bob, do you think that that's because Al is his own kind of coach? He's more of like a rah-rah guy, and you have to kind of buy into what he's preaching to you. Like you can see the young guys. Cody doesn't know better. He's only been coached by Al Washington. Some of these guys have only been coached at linebacker at Ohio State by Al Washington. Those are the guys right now that seem to be really picking it up. And Tarajan is an exception because he's a leader of the defense. But some of these guys who didn't have Al their first year or two didn't seem to be playing as well as the guys who have had solely Al in their career.
I mean, everyone told me Billy Davis was terrible. I mean, that's not the narrative, so shouldn't bring it in Al. And now people are saying, well, Al might not be a very good coach. Listen, you have to have good players, and then you have to have players that care a lot. They may be talented, but actually care about doing what they're supposed to do. Cody Simon and Tommy Eichenberg are not going to make the same mistakes twice. And I think for that fact, Taraja Mitchell, you could probably throw him. Some of those young guys, they're conscientious. They care a lot. So when you make a mistake, that's cool. Let's not do the same thing the next week. And that's where people have gotten upset with some of these players. Some
of the veterans, right?
Some of the veteran guys, like, we've been coaching you to do that. Why are they doing that? Well, okay, it's one thing if the young guy makes that mistake. They've never done it before. You did this last year. You did this last week. And I tell you what to do. I can't do it for you. And I don't think it's like Al's coaching style. I've watched him go out there and coach. I think he does a good job. The points that he makes, the level and area of expertise and instruction, I think, is on point. It's a matter of sometimes guys being able to absorb it and understand it and then take it to the field. And I think some of the guys that are playing a little bit more now, they're doing that, and that's why you're starting to see some of that growth.
I said that maybe I was wrong about the Steel Chambers thing. You guys convinced me. I'll say that I was. Maybe it was just the sales pitch wasn't aggressive enough or sold properly, but eventually they got it right here. And if you take the linebackers out of the equation, as Ohio State goes for what time's the game on Saturday, Berm?
3:30.
3:30.
Which actually, to be fair, is 3:30 in New Jersey is essentially 7:30 in Ohio.
Yeah, it's a night game in New Jersey.
Yeah,
it'll be dark.
Yeah. It's dark by 4:15 in New Jersey.
Hey. After daylight, not before daylight savings time.
Hey,
what day is it?
The game is Saturday.
Saturday.
See Lubranos.
So there's this little Italian joint we go to. It's called Lubranos. It's right next to an adult store for beverages.
I thought the name Lubranos might be an adult, like sort of adult.
Well,
no, but
funny story about that.
We like to go to Lubranos before the games in New Jersey. We like to go to Stuff Your Face in Piscataway on campus.
Two of the only 4 things that you can do in Piscataway, New Jersey.
But Stuff Your Face is definitely primo stopping grounds. If you're an Ohio State fan and you're going to Rutgers, go to Stuff Your Face.
You were talking about Lubranos, however.
I know, but then I started thinking about those Strombolis.
Yeah, about those
Strombos.
You'll actually enjoy that story, Bob, but it's not really one that we should tell on the air, so we'll just save that. If you take the linebackers out of it, Saturday afternoon/night, what does Ohio State have to show you to win this game? What do they have to prove? What question is most unanswered about this team as they head into game number 5, which feels like game 15?
Well, I think defensively, and this is even going to be, I think for the offense as well, but it's more noticeable on the defense. Greg Schiano really played it pretty straight against Michigan. They really didn't do a whole lot. I mean, they got
I didn't
down.
feel like they were even trying to win the game.
They're trying to keep it close. It felt like, okay, down 20-3, they come back, they make it respectable. It's 20-13 at the end of the game. They really didn't feel like they sold out, like not with all the bag of tricks they had last year against Ohio State. So there's going to be something in there that you're not ready for. And their coach is going to tell them, like, we can't sit here and just practice all these crazy things that we think Greg Schiano might do. We've got to use our rules of our assignment. They may come out in a formation or something that we've never even seen. We've got to stay calm. We have to adjust to it and be able to get it stopped, and then we'll get back to their normal stuff. And so we're talking about playing a lot of young guys. It's hard when you're young because you haven't seen enough stuff before. When you're older, like, yeah, we saw this a year and a half ago, and maybe it's some version of it.
Yep.
We'll do this and that, and boom, it's fixed. And you don't give up a touchdown while you're trying to fix it, which is also key. So that's some of the things that I'm looking at. Like, Greg's tough. He's an aggressive coach. They'll be ready to go, but he ultimately there's going to be some wrinkles, I think, in this game plan that they haven't really seen all year. Maybe a crack toss to the boundary.
Well, yeah, that's
Definitely seen that.
hard to get ready for that. Yeah, it's such a novel concept.
Greg's teams do one thing, and it's play really hard. It's a tough team. They're just tough. Like against Michigan, you saw them. Like Michigan was punching them in the mouth early, and Rutgers just
The Tampa Bay Buccaneers played so hard.
kind of didn't go away. Like
In all fairness, he did want them to fire off on victory knees, and they did do it, which I can't believe all the guys did.
like the toughness aspect is something you're going to get from Rutgers nowadays. And so I think I just need to see from Ohio State that level of defensive toughness that, in all honesty, really wasn't there against Oregon.
Yeah.
Was spotty against Tulsa. Like, you need to come out, punch them in the mouth, show the toughness, match the toughness of Rutgers because they're going to be up for it. And then that's when the talent kicks in. You're so much more talented than them across the board. Like, if you can come out, match the toughness, I think that's when the talent will show, and that's when you could see, a pretty lopsided score once that talent does kick in.
I want intestinal fortitude. Okay? I want to see Javonte Jean-Baptiste and Tyreek Smith and Zach Harrison and Teron Vincent. I want to see those guys when they're back in the lineup after taking this week off against Akron, when most of them could have played. I want to see them realize that their job is in jeopardy because the young guys are coming, and the young guys are not going to be just handing them their job back.
No.
And I want to see those guys who we were counting on, at the beginning of the year, that defensive line was supposed to be the ace in the hole for Ohio State as the rest of the defense figured itself out. And the defensive line, up until the game against Akron, which doesn't count entirely, but 9 sacks, 10 sacks now in the year for the defensive tackles for Ohio State, only 2 for the defensive ends. Something has to give when it comes to the young guys, whether it's JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer, keeping Harrison and JJB and Tyreek Smith off the field. That, to me, is the first thing. Those defensive linemen coming back have to be dominant. Second, I want to see if CJ Stroud can prove that he's the guy and be I know CJ Stroud's a leader on the team, and that's not a question mark. I want to see him, if he's ready to go physically, go out there and dominate a game. If he's not, and this is going to maybe sound counterintuitive, I don't want him to play. So that's what I thought.
I mean,
if he's not ready,
No, I'm with you. We're not putting our toe in the water here.
Right.
Like, this isn't wading into a zero entry. This is, hey, buddy, we're jumping off this cliff in Jamaica. Are the rocks down there? Maybe. The guy jumped before me. He landed right there. I'm going to land in the same spot. I watched him come up. All right, 40 feet. Whoosh, let's go.
the way I came at it, the way Berm put it, I was trying to think if I disagreed with that. I don't think I do, because coming out of Saturday night, my takeaway at quarterback was Ohio State could win the Big Ten with any of the 3. I said that in the spring, and I feel that way now. There's more evidence that Kyle McCord could potentially do that, even if it was just Akron. But the most important thing for Ohio State is to play a healthy quarterback. So if C.J. Stroud is not healthy, then you shouldn't play him, because they need somebody to take advantage of the 3 best wide receivers in the country.
and the best running back in the Big Ten.
And, you can't have this situation where you never know what's going to happen if he's going to, pull off of a release because there's a pain in the shoulder and throwing high because of that. I know that C.J. Stroud has a legitimate excuse for some of these throws, but it doesn't quite work as well when on the very next one he can throw a 50-yarder on the line to Chris Olave. So they need to, once they decide, if he's healthy, C.J. Stroud is the guy. But what they need more than anything is a healthy guy, because you cannot forfeit the advantage that you have with the rest of that offense.
Greg Schiano is going to throw some stuff at a young quarterback that's going to be confusing no matter what. So if you throw that out there and then you have to deal with the uncertainty around the shoulder and that part of it as well, then it's just another wrinkle that you just don't need. If you're going to have a quarterback out there making mistakes or throwing, I don't care which one it is. So as long as it's a guy that is going to be 100% able to go as hard as he can go the whole game, that's what matters to me.
Wouldn't surprise me if Greg sent some pressure. You're going to put Stroud out there and he's got a bad shoulder. Like, let's get to him. Let's make him uncomfortable. We'll see if he gets hit to the ground once, how good it feels, and then make your decision.
I think the added layer to this is nobody is expecting a quarterback controversy whatsoever. But the longer, if C.J. Stroud is to sit against Rutgers, the longer he is out, the more body of work Kyle McCord has to put together. And then you're talking about going into mid to late October, and you're still wondering, okay, who's the quarterback when C.J. Stroud is healthy? I think this is a huge week for that quarterback room, just because if he's not healthy and then McCord goes out and plays well against Rutgers, and then you say, okay, CJ, are you 100%? And if he says yes, then okay, go out there against Maryland. If he says no, then Kyle McCord's getting a third start. And so I think this is a very big week for that quarterback room.
Well, I think if the situation is serious enough that he can't play for 2 weeks, then you're not just talking about rest being the fix for that.
Absolutely.
But we'll see. I'm also not a doctor. I just host Lettermen Live at Roosters every Monday. It's a fun casual joint. They're giving away a bowl trip that Bob knows a little bit about. You can register every single day.
Every single day,
wow.
but you can register. There are now 8 opportunities left to win. There was originally 12. Go to roosterswings.com. You can register to win 2 bowl tickets per person every single week. So you win, you get a pair of bowl tickets, you get airfare to the bowl location, assuming they win 2 more games, and deluxe hotel accommodations.
Deluxe.
Wow.
And so Roosters, the official wing sponsor of Ohio State Athletics, by the way, roosterswings.com. You can register there. Go sign up, go win. Who is Chris Davis, the former Orioles slugger, won the last one, so that's exciting for him to be able to do that with his
He's
buyout.
an Ohio guy.
Is he really?
Yeah, he's from up near like Fremont or something.
Perfect.
Like 140 last
Well, that makes sense. That makes sense why he would register and be going to Roosters. So
That feels like Berm made
No, that
that
was
up.
Chris Hoyles.
Oh,
Yeah, I
okay.
knew Berm made that up.
You said Orioles guy. I'm like, oh, Chris
I was
said
thinking
whatever.
of Chris Davis, the Alabama kick 6 game.
Oh.
I don't know anything about baseball.
By the way, it's Mike Schmidt's birthday today. So
Mike Schmidt,
He's an Ohio Bobcat, too.
536 career home runs.
from Dayton, Ohio.
Berm's birthday.
So somehow I know that.
Berm's birthday is this weekend.
Some call him the best third baseman of all time.
Do you?
Is that right?
I'm not well versed enough
Him
to
and
make
Brooks
it.
Robinson, maybe that conversation.
Okay, we've lost the plot. Totally.
I'd probably say Mike Schmidt would probably be the best third baseman of all time.
I
There you go.
guarantee that I don't care how that conversation ends, one way or the other. So let's.
But it will be a happy ending for Austin, as
That's-
always.
And it will be. We're going to get out of here. Thanks to Nicole Cox and Roosters for having us back in the Letterman Lounge. This has been Letterman Live. I've lost control of the show, so it's time for us to go. Thanks to Nicole, Spencer Holbrook, Bobby Carpenter, Jeremy Birmingham. I'm Austin Ward. We will see you next time. Stay tuned for full coverage of Ohio State and Rutgers at 3:30 p.m. on Saturday at lettermenrow.com.